Have you ever heard of the fat Rupture Lamb? Out of 100 sheep, you pick the fattest one, and then slaughter the other 99 right in front of it. The lamb will die of fright, and its fat will rupture. Cook it the simplest way, and it tastes like heaven. When my dad made fat Rupture Lamb, my mom was scared to death literally. My dad peeled her skin open, and her fat split into a web of cracks, running from her head to her toes. As the steam pot started to boil, my dad took a deep breath and looked back at me. What could possibly be fatter than a fat Rupture Lamb? My dad ran a lamb restaurant in the village. The men in the village loved coming over, and as New Year approached, they came more often, more eagerly. Some even whispered to him, "Tony, are you making fat Rupture Lamb for the New Year?" My dad sighed. "It's too expensive, too much trouble. I'm not doing it anymore." The other men gathered around, praising his skills and pouring him drink after drink. "The fat Rupture Lamb Tony made, I've never forgotten that taste. Better than anything else on the menu." Yeah, I bought the fattest one that year. Best lamb I've ever seen. They started arguing over breeds again. Which lamb had the best meat? Nearly got into a fight. My dad just smirked, threw an arm around the village chief's shoulders. "If you ask me, nothing beats a fat Rupture Lamb. There's a unique fragrance to it. One bite and you'll never forget." The village chief nodded, eyes dreamy with nostalgia. That last one must have been 20 years ago. Folks got into a brawl over the meat. Even the fetus in that lamb's belly got divided up clean. I leaned in, curious. Why don't they use rams for it? In the countryside, you usually raise ewes unless they stop breeding worth more than males. Maybe my dad was drunk, but his eyes turned bloodshot as he glared at me. "It has to be a ewe." The villagers begged and pleaded, even stuffed a fat wad of cash into his hands, just to taste that legendary dish. The village chief added, "That ewe of yours wait any longer, and it'll be too old to eat. Might as well bring her out and let us all have a taste. She's already birthed a lamb anyway." Eventually, my dad gave in and agreed to make the dish for New Year. The men in the village were thrilled, like it was already the holiday. I was excited too, drooling at the thought of it. That night, I rushed home to tell my mom. "Dad said he's making fat Rupture Lamb for New Year. Mom, have you ever had it? Is it really as good as he says?" My mom was sewing winter pants with a needle. She pricked her finger, and blood started to seep out. "He's letting you eat that meat?" Actually, Dad hadn't said that. Something so costly, he'd never share it with us. I winked at her. "Once it's done, I'll sneak a piece home for us to try. People say you never forget that taste, not even after 20 years. My mom's voice trembled as she gripped my shoulders tight. "Listen to me. Whatever you do, don't eat that meat. Never eat it. Fat Rupture Lamb isn't lamb at all." Even though Dad had agreed to make it, one lamb clearly wasn't enough for the whole village. If you wanted a taste, you had to fight for it. So the villagers started sending in one fat, plump lamb after another. My dad stood at the gate with a notebook, weighing and counting each lamb. If a lamb didn't make the cut, they'd have to pay extra by their spot at the table. Some who couldn't compete tried every trick to curry favor, just to score a bite or a sip of the soup. My dad made a killing. The sheep pen was bursting with animals. He carefully recorded each family's portion in his notebook. My mom sat inside, watching from afar. Her rice bowl held nothing but raw ginger and scallions, which she was chewing mechanically, one bite at a time. "Mom, since when do you like that stuff?" I got curious and took a bite too, spat it right out. Disgusting. She kept chewing without a word, face blank. That night, she clung to me in bed. The pungent smell of raw ginger and scallions on her body made my head spin. I tried to push her away, scooting further from her. Half asleep, I mumbled, "Mom, could you stop eating that stuff? It stinks." She hummed softly and patted me. "Once New Year's over, I won't have to eat it anymore." Our backyard was connected to the sheep pen. Our home was in the middle, with the restaurant up front by the road. Since we'd be slaughtering a lot of lambs for the holiday, my dad built a massive stove outside the sheep pen. As the stove grew taller day by day, my mom grew more and more restless. I often saw her panicking, hiding from the people helping out, devouring ginger and scallions like a madwoman. She traded her bowl for a basin, eating pounds of the stuff each day. The smell oozed out of her like it came from deep inside her body. I tried talking her out of it, but it didn't work. I just kept my distance. When the stove was finally finished, all our relatives showed up. My mom didn't greet a single one. "Mom, why'd you run from Uncle? He called your name the other day and you didn't even look at him." As I got closer, I smelled meat lamb, marinated in ginger and scallions, just like in Dad's restaurant, but richer, more irresistible. I sniffed hard and snuggled up to her, wishing I could climb into her arms. "Did you help out at the restaurant again? Did Dad come up with a new recipe?" My mom stayed silent. I tugged on her arm, begging, "You smell amazing! Just tell me! I promise I won't sneak any." She hugged her basin and ran off again. Strange. Ever since Dad started building that stove, Mom hadn't spoken a word. No matter what I asked, she wouldn't answer. Sometimes, she'd just suddenly hug me tight and not let go for ages. I started feeling uneasy, like she was about to disappear on me. I searched the whole yard until I found her hiding in the house. Only then did I breathe easy. "Kristen, come try this for Dad." My dad had ordered a custom pot to fit the new stove big enough to stew 2 or 3 whole sheep, plus a giant steamer. It arrived that day bigger than the one at the village bun shop. It took several people to lift it and set it on the stove. That's what everyone had been busy with. My dad picked me up and placed me inside. "Lie down, help me check the size." I was tempted sealed boxes like this were irresistible. Without a second thought, I climbed in and stretched out flat. It was the perfect fit. I could stretch my arms and legs or curl into a ball. I figured an adult would have to bend their knees a bit. Dad said this year's fat Rupture Lamb would be steamed whole, no tricks. Just the purest, most authentic flavor. As he said it, he stared straight past me. I followed his gaze and saw my mom, chewing on a scallion leaf. Her expression was exactly the same as the sheep in the pen behind her. On the 29th of the lunar year, everyone on the list was supposed to come to our house. Dad had only promised 20 portions. But I'd seen his notebook. It was packed with names. All those people wanted a piece. The night before, my dad suddenly burst into my room, holding 2 freshly sharpened knives. He dragged me out to peel and slice potatoes, layering them into the steamer, 2 full layers. We worked late into the night. My arms ached. My head throbbed. Just as I collapsed into bed and closed my eyes, I heard Dad calling again. I opened my eyes to daylight. Dad was out in the yard, sharpening knives, the blades gleaming. Around him was a spread of knives, big and small, covering the entire stove. Some were old and rusty, but he pulled them all out to sharpen. "Dad, why do you need so many knives?" He didn't look up. "You have to kill them all in one go. No stopping. If a blade gets dull, you need a fresh one ready. Why not just buy new ones?" He gently laid a finished knife on the table. "Store-bought knives don't scare a fat Rupture Lamb to death." It was nearly noon when he finished sharpening. He checked the sun's position and told me to start boiling water. Then he closed the yard gate. The villagers lined up outside, pulling sheep out of the pen one by one. My dad's knives were sharp and his hands steady. The moment a sheep faced him, he slashed its throat. Even with its windpipe cut, It didn't die right away, it thrashed violently. When the person holding the sheep let go, it bolted, blood streaming down its white coat, splattering everywhere. Once most of the blood drained and the sheep could no longer run or jump, it would crash to the ground, its twitching hooves clawing wildly. Killing one wasn't too bad, but my dad was slaughtering 100. Before one sheep could even fall, another one would charge out, turning the courtyard into complete chaos. All the sheep were bouncing madly within the pen. The first ones to fall had already been trampled into meat paste. More kept collapsing, joining the mess. The air was filled with the screeches of dying sheep, the laughter of village men, and the endless counting from my dad. It was hell on earth. I'd never seen anything so horrific. I stood frozen in shock. Blood splattered on my face. A sheep slammed into me, knocking me to the ground. I screamed and curled up, covering my head, hiding by the stove. My mom wrapped her arms around me from behind, gently stroking my head. 98. 99. My dad's voice suddenly stopped. All the noise seemed to vanish. The last sheep had just fallen. Did that chosen sheep my dad's pick already die of fright? Had it been trampled into paste? Bah! A sharp bleat shrieked right in my ear, so close it made me jolt. At the same time, the weight on me vanished. My mom, who had been shielding me, was gone. I looked up, my dad stood beside me, quietly placing the lid on the steamer. 100. Through the tiny gap in the lid, I thought I saw my mom lying on her side, legs stretched out. I shoved my dad like crazy and yanked the lid open. Inside was not my mom, it was a sheep, untouched, unskinned, no wounds. It lay intact on its side. I reached out in disbelief and touched the wool. It was real, still warm. Its eyes were still open, pupils stretched sideways, nothing like a human's. It really was a sheep. For a second, I'd actually wondered if my mom had been wrapped in sheepskin. My dad pulled me down from the stove and shut the lid again. He didn't scold me. Instead, he explained to the villagers that I had worked all night and hadn't rested. He patted my head. The lamb has to steam until night. You're not needed here. Go get some sleep. My head felt fuzzier, but I clung to his hand. Where's Mom? She was just here. Where did she go? He looked at me with disapproval, like I was being unreasonable. What nonsense are you talking? Your mom disappeared days ago. How could she have been here just now? I started explaining in a panic, waving my arms. I got knocked down by the sheep. She was the one who shielded me. She was right next to me. My dad shoved me toward the house. Silly girl. You're sleep-deprived and delusional. Other villagers chimed in. If your mom were here, we'd all have seen her. Exactly. Don't say such ominous things during the new year. We're all grown-ups. Why would we lie to a child? Poor thing's hallucinating from exhaustion. I grabbed the back of my shirt and sniffed. No familiar scent of ginger or scallions. If my mom had really held me that long, her scent would have rubbed off. I started doubting my memory. Maybe I imagined her because I was too upset about her being gone. Maybe that's why she hadn't spoken to me lately, because she wasn't real. My dad stared straight into my eyes. Go to sleep. Maybe when you wake up, everything will be clearer. I was forced back to bed, lying there in a daze, head splitting with pain. But I couldn't sleep. All I could think about was Mom. She would never leave me like this. If she really hadn't come home in days, something must have happened. I had to find her. I snuck out of the yard and wandered the village like a headless chicken, asking everyone I saw. No one had seen her. No one knew where she'd gone. Your mom never went out much. Sometimes we wouldn't see her for 2 weeks. Missing for days? Since when? No one said anything. Your dad's got some nerve. Never seen him looking for her. but he sure kept hauling groceries home. Gone for days with no word? She's probably gone for good. Sorry, kid. Tears streamed down my face. I covered it with my hands and then caught a familiar smell. Marinated meat. It was the same scent I used to smell on Mom. And this was the hand that had touched the steamed lamb earlier. An aunt patted my shoulder. Don't cry, sweetheart. Wait, what's that smell? The scent thickened in the air. People froze mid-motion. I saw them all lift their heads at the same time, inhaling greedily. That's Tony's lamb. The fat Rupture Lamb is done. I gave them a few sheep myself. I better get my share. Yeah, right. There are only 20 portions. Folks lined up at dawn. Exactly. Probably not even scraps left. Let's go. Even if there's no meat, a bone or two for soup is worth it. They all stampeded toward my house like a pack of crazed animals. The ant beside me clung tightly as we were knocked to the ground. People stepped on her several times. Even after the crowd passed, she still wouldn't let me go. Thank you, Auntie, I said shakily. She gripped my shoulders hard, frighteningly strong. Kristen, I protected you just now. You know that, right? Her eyes were bloodshot, locked onto mine. I risked my life otherwise. You'd have been trampled to death. I don't want much. Just one bite. Just a little piece of lamb. You're not an ungrateful child, are you? I wanted to run, but she held too tight. I nodded instead. She dragged me by the arm toward my house. People crowded around the gate, layer upon layer, some even climbing the walls. Most were men, few women. Every face had the same crazed look as hers. She pushed me forward, yelling for people to make way. My dad was blocking the door, but when he saw me, he yanked me inside. Auntie reluctantly let go. Her fingernails left a bloody scratch on my arm. I gasped for air. I told you to stay home and rest. When did you sneak out? The sky over the yard was black, like ink spilled across it. I turned to look outside. The sky was just as dark. The people outside were packed together, some with flashlights, others holding bowls. But when I just returned, it had been broad daylight. Why are you just standing there? The steamer had just been opened. The entire yard reeked of rich aroma. I instinctively raised my hand and sniffed. Same scent. The whole lamb still lay inside. The village chief and others carefully lifted the steamer down. My dad held our smallest boning knife and made the first cut along its spine. I heard the sound of flesh tearing. I leaned in closer and watched as he slid in his fingers, twisted, and peeled the skin clean off. Yellow fat glistened on top, striped, layered, like a membrane or a web draped over the meat. My dad tossed the skin aside. I immediately turned my head away. I thought I heard a faint clink, like metal hitting the floor. Too quiet, maybe I imagined it. Dad was overjoyed. This one's perfect. Fat's evenly spread. The cracks are beautiful. I haven't seen such a gorgeous lamb in years. The village chief and the others gulped audibly. Some couldn't help but reach for the meat. Steam burned their fingers back, but their eyes only gleamed brighter. Come on, Tony! We've been waiting all day. Don't torture us! Yeah, I feel like tearing into it right now. My dad cut into the belly, and the ginger scallion aroma intensified, even though the lamb hadn't been marinated at all. I started to tremble. I thought about how much ginger and scallions Mom had eaten, the way she smelled. A chill ran through my entire body. The meat was carved piece by piece. The village chief and the others each took a slab and scurried to the corners, guarding their share like treasure. They hissed from the heat but couldn't wait to tear into it. My dad sliced into the lamb's chest, carving out a chunk of tenderloin just for me. Unlike the rest of the meat, this piece was still red, dripping with blood. Kristen, you helped Dad all day. You've earned this. This is the best part of the lamb. I saved it just for you. Go on, eat it." His eyes sparkled as he looked at me, just like Auntie's did. "Thanks, Dad. I've been craving this for so long. Finally, I get to try it." I shoved the whole piece into my mouth in front of him, chewing hungrily. Only after he saw me swallow did he turn away. The lamb had nearly been picked clean, only the head and some organs remained. He reverently lifted the head and kissed its mouth. Then, gripping the upper and lower jaws, he cracked it open. He bit the tongue in half in one savage chomp, smacking his lips as he chewed. He turned sideways, his back half facing me, but I didn't dare let my guard down. His eyes still watched me from the corner. I forced myself to smile hungrily at him, fighting off the nausea. The village chief and the others didn't want to waste a single bite. They ate until their stomachs bulged and collapsed onto the ground. My dad didn't seem particularly interested in the meat. He only took a few bites, and his face lacked that crazed, addicted look. Like me, he stayed calm. All the gnawed bones were collected and tossed into the big pot with the lamb broth to make soup. My dad took out his notebook and began fulfilling his promises. Everyone who brought a sheep or gave him money got a serving of lamb, broth, potatoes, and a bowl of bone soup, so that was why he had me make the potato layers that morning. Everyone brought their own bowls and rushed to line up. The aunt who helped me stood at the very back, drooling. I told Dad I wanted to help, and he was thrilled. We lined the bowls with potatoes, then ladled in the lamb soup, all strictly by portion. Those who donated more could come back for a bone after they finished. The aunt handed me her bowl. I filled it to the brim with potatoes, leaving only a thin layer of soup. She shot me a hateful glare, but as she walked off, she poked through it with her chopsticks and then turned back, surprised and grateful, bowing repeatedly. My dad gave me a sharp look. I turned to him, puzzled. "What's wrong, Dad?" I still had blood from the lamb meat on my lips. He shook his head. "Women in this village don't deserve such good food. Next time someone begs you, you come tell me." Will there even be a next time? And if there is, who's the next lamb? Even the last smooth bone from the pot was claimed. Everyone left satisfied. I volunteered to stay and help Dad clean up. I secretly hid the sheepskin inside the house. It didn't smell much unless you got really close. You wouldn't notice. No way Dad would find out. I lay over the skin and searched every inch. Finally, inside a tangled clump of fur, I found a key. It was old and a little greasy, with rust along the edges. I'd seen it before. Dad always kept it on him. It was the key to the back kitchen. He never let me go in there. But tonight, he'd had drinks with the village chief and passed out early. That meant this was my chance. I peeked into his room. It was snoring loud enough to shake the house, completely out cold. The lock on the kitchen door was rusted. My hands trembled as I opened it. The back kitchen was huge, bigger than any room in our house and spotless. Too spotless. There were no seasonings on the tables, no oil, salt, soy sauce, or vinegar. Just 2 cutting boards. I stepped closer and found no knife marks. Dad always used old-style clay stoves. 4 of them were lined up neatly, spotless. Even the firewood slots weren't blackened. It was like the place had never been used. Bah! A sudden bleat from the corner made me jump. That's when I noticed 2 cages in the corner. In one was a skinny woman with a swollen belly. The other held a fat sheep. When she saw me, she lunged at the bars and waved her hands desperately. But all that came from her mouth were bleats. The sheep beside her didn't move. Its sideways pupils watched me warily. The woman sobbed, tears streaming, clutching my hand and refusing to let go. She looked a bit like my mom. "Can you write? Don't panic. Write it for me. I know simple characters." She shook her head, started gesturing. She pointed to herself. Then the sheep, then made a slicing motion across her neck. "You mean you'll turn into a sheep? And they'll eat you?" She nodded fiercely, hands clasped in a pleading gesture. I looked at her round belly, her face that resembled Mom. I felt a pang of guilt. "The cage is locked. Wait here, I'll get some pliers from home." She nodded, stroking her belly, a hopeful smile on her face. I ran out, hooked the lock back in place, and returned only to run straight into Dad. He reeked of alcohol. His bull-like eyes stared me down. "You went into the kitchen?" I awkwardly held up the pliers and smiled. "I was hungry. You didn't answer when I called, so I thought I'd find something myself." Dad stared at me, then reached into his pocket. My hands were slick with sweat. The real key was still clutched in my palm. But he paused, pulled out his own key, and opened the door. I didn't dare follow. I just stood at the entrance, peeking inside. The kitchen looked completely different now. Grease stains by the stove, onions and seasonings on the table. The walls were darker. There were new pieces of furniture too, stuff I hadn't seen earlier. I instinctively glanced at the corner. No cages, no woman, no sheep. Then I remembered something Dad had said while chatting with the village chief. 20 years ago, they made fat Rupture Lamb, and that lamb was a pregnant ewe. Could the woman I saw be that lamb? But that's impossible. It happened 20 years ago, before I was even born. Yet the key in my hand dug into my palm, solid and real. Everything I saw had been real. Dad came out of the kitchen and handed me 2 pieces of flatbread. "Go to bed early." I wanted to sneak another look inside, but saw Dad dragging the slaughtered sheep into the kitchen from the backyard. He was prepping for the next day, clearly not planning to sleep. I brought the bread back to my room and only then realized my palm was soaked with sweat. I took out the key. It looked newer, less rust than before. Ever since the fat Rupture Lamb, business had boomed. People came non-stop. The strange thing was Dad cooked pot after pot of lamb, but never opened the shop. Villagers outside were getting desperate, pounding on the door. Dad spent every day inside, working non-stop until dawn. I didn't understand why he pushed himself so hard. He made more money this time than we had in the last 2 years combined, so why work like this? "Dad, we've got all this lamb, why not sell it?" He looked at the villagers trying to force their way in. "You can't eat any lamb within 7 days after fat Rupture Lamb. Otherwise," he glanced at me, then waved impatiently. "Doesn't matter. In 7 days, they'll be starving for it. We need to stock up. This is the best time to make money." My gut told me those 7 days mattered. I had to get back into the kitchen. I asked Auntie to buy a few things for me from outside. She always loitered near our door, hoping to get something from me through our connection. Everything she did, she expected something in return. I was fine with that. I promised to sneak her some lamb. That evening, I handed Dad a few ugly corn buns and looked at him eagerly. "Dad, I made these. Try them." Not long after eating, he fell asleep. I shook him a few times. His head smacked the table and still didn't wake. I grabbed the key and rushed to the kitchen. The woman was gone. Only a sheep lay curled in the cage, completely still. I called to it, no response. The stove had been used. I searched the kitchen and found a lamb tail hanging by the door. It still had fur clearly chopped off whole. It had dried out now. Yellow fat gleamed on it. Yellow fat? I touched the wool, then sniffed my fingers. The scent of ginger, scallions, and meat. I was too late. That woman, she'd been killed. I shut the door. When I opened it again, the kitchen had returned to how it originally looked. I checked the key, it looked newer. I stole a piece of lamb for Auntie. She beamed, saying she'd keep helping me. I noticed we had another lamb tail hanging in our kitchen. I broke apart the meat at the base. It revealed the same netted yellow fat. Then, I remembered before Mom started binging ginger and scallions, she had a bowl of lamb tail soup, The next morning, Dad woke up to find me passed out at the table, still holding half a bun. He looked at me suspiciously. I apologized. I lied. I didn't make the buns. Auntie gave them to me. She said they'd help you rest. I just wanted you to rest. He stared at me a long while, then sighed. He said he'd go deal with Auntie later, but first went into the kitchen to check everything. I peeked from the door and saw the first thing he checked was the lamb tail. He peeled back the skin and, seeing the yellow fat inside, let out a breath of relief. So did I, thank goodness I hadn't stolen it. Then he checked the meat. When he lifted one pot, he sneered. Looks like we've got a rat in the kitchen. Someone stole some meat. I trembled. My dad was a monster. He had made 20 or 30 pots these past 2 days. I only took a piece, the size of a sugar cube. I couldn't even tell which pot it came from. How did he know? What now? You said no lamb within 7 days. Dad closed the lid. Doesn't matter. It's fate. Gluttony always comes with a price. That evening, the village chief brought 2 sheep, 1 male, 1 female. He sighed. More and more people are going missing. Someone went to Emily's this morning. No one was home. I saw 2 sheep wandering in the yard and thought I'd just deliver them to you. Emily was Auntie's name. If they come back, let them come to you. If not, consider these 2 sheep my contribution to your lamb restaurant. The village chief suddenly changed the subject and smiled at my dad. So I hear you've been cooking lamb again lately. How about letting your old pal have a taste? But my dad didn't give him any. Chief, the rules were set by my father 20 years ago. He made me promise to stick to them. Don't worry, this time I've kept the seed fat. When the lambs grow up in a few years, you'll be the first I call. The chief left reluctantly. All right, I've still got work to do. I need to keep looking for Emily and her family. Where could they have gone? Emily's always been quick on her feet. Her husband's been bedridden for years. How'd he disappear too? His wheelchair's still at the house. My dad kept a close eye on me, refused to eat anything I gave him. Luckily, he still had to sleep. On the final day, he let his guard down. I snuck into the kitchen, and there, I saw someone I never expected my mom. She was kneeling inside a cage, her mouth gagged. In the cage next to her was a sheep. I rushed over and pulled the cloth from her mouth. Tears poured from her eyes. Her lips trembled as she hugged me through the bars. She still didn't smell like cooked meat, only the sharp, familiar scent of raw ginger and scallion. I clutched her tightly, crying. Mom, can you talk? She shook her head and pointed to the sheep, then to her own throat. My tears came harder. But she grabbed my hand and carefully traced words on my palm. Don't eat lamb. If you eat lamb within 7 days after fat Rupture Lamb, you'll turn into one. Let them eat. I spoke fast. But today is the 7th day. Dad's been cooking lamb non-stop and watching me like a hawk. He's not going to eat it himself. Mom wrote again. Eat the tail! Right. The lamb tail was part of the fat Rupture Lamb. But Dad never lets me in the kitchen. He knows every batch's portions. How am I supposed to sneak it in? I told Mom about stealing meat days ago. She pointed at the kitchen stove and wrote the word soup on my hand. I shook my head. The smell of fat Rupture Lamb was too strong. Boiling soup at home would surely alert Dad. Maybe it'd go unnoticed here, but I couldn't stay long. Mom stroked my head, then had me fetch 2 bowls. She cut her own wrist and filled one halfway with blood, same as the sheep's, then smiled at me. The key in my hand looked newer than ever. I looked at her. Will I still be able to see you next time I come? She nodded. How many more times do I have? She didn't hesitate, raised 2 fingers. After the 7 days passed, just like Dad predicted, our lamb shop was flooded with people. Every last bite of lamb was devoured that day. Everyone left stuffed. I was running around non-stop, serving and plating dishes. Dad, good thing you prepped all this ahead, no way we'd keep up otherwise. Dad grunted, constantly sniffing. Do you smell something delicious? I raised my head, sniffed too. Kinda smells like the lamb stew from a few days ago. Then shook my head. But not nearly as rich. Do you think someone else is trying to copy our fat Rupture Lamb? Dad's face twisted in disdain. They can't do it. Only we can make this lamb. Even though he said that, he still went to check the lamb tail. It had dried completely hard as wood. He carefully placed it into a jar and hid it somewhere. The second and third day, business stayed booming. The chief and others dragged Dad off to drink. He couldn't refuse. I went to the back and served up the lamb he'd set aside. I stirred it with a spatula, plated it, and placed it before them. They ate greedily. The chief sucked his fingers. Damn, this lamb is good. So flavorful. Yeah, almost like that fat Rupture Lamb from the other day. Tony really treats us well, saving the best for us. Cheers, brother. I saw Dad's face change. He sniffed the lamb repeatedly and even stepped out briefly. I knew he'd gone to check the lamb tail. I followed him quietly. He came back, relaxed. I brought in more drinks. This time, he dug into the meat heartily. I smiled. After the guests left, he staggered into the kitchen to prep the next day's lamb. That day, Dad made the lamb himself. He kept sniffing it, eyes full of delight. I watched as he picked out a piece and popped it into his mouth, smacking his lips. He was used to the taste now. For days, I had been secretly adding the blood Mom gave me into the stew, hoping it would turn them into sheep, but it never worked. The blood only enhanced the flavor, brought it close to fat Rupture Lamb. The real catalyst was the lamb tail. Dad didn't make much that day, but crowds came anyway. They almost fought over the pot. Some complained again about missing the fat Rupture Lamb. Said Dad was greedy. With no other choice, he added water to the pot, shredded the meat, and divided it evenly. At least this time, there was both soup and meat. The villagers were thrilled. The next day, Dad made more pots, his eyes glowing. Lately, he'd been letting me into the kitchen. While his back was turned, I added vinegar to the soup. Then I shouted, "Dad, I think our old broth's gone bad. Smells sour." That broth had been simmering for decades. Dad treasured it. He came over, sniffed, frowning. Unbelieving, he sipped some broth, chewed a piece of meat. It's spoiled. It really is. Maybe the weather's too hot. It's always been stored this way. How could this... Bah. He clutched his throat, eyes widening at me. His pupils were beginning to turn horizontal. I grabbed a ladle and started handing out meat to the crowd outside, watching them devour every last bit, one by one. My heart soared. Dad was crawling now. I ignored him, ran inside, grabbed the key and pliers, and opened the kitchen door. Inside the cage was only Mom. The sheep was gone. But Mom didn't look happy, she looked panicked. I brought the pliers to unlock her, but she tried to stop me. "Kristen, listen, today isn't the right day. Come back next time." With that look and tone, of course I didn't believe her. Of course I didn't stop. But the lock wouldn't open. At home, it took only a twist, but here, it wouldn't budge. Not a single crack in the lock. I kept adding force, panting from the effort. Mom pushed me hard. "Go, get out of here. Why waste time? You still have one more chance. Come back next time and save me." I laughed bitterly. "Mom, you've been lying to me from the start. I've figured it out. Each time I come back to the same place, it sends me further back in time. The first time, I thought the woman had already been killed, but she hadn't. The lamb tail was still there. The sheep was still alive. The second time, she wasn't even in the cage yet. You're the same. First time I saw you, I didn't know what point I landed at, but you'd already eaten the lamb tail. Already started eating ginger and scallions. Couldn't speak, just bleated like a sheep. But now this time, you're still talking. You've only just been locked up. You haven't had the soup yet, right? The more I said, the more she shook her head, sobbing. Go! Get out of here! Why, Mom? Why? She screamed. It's fate. It's all fate. The door burst open. Dad stood there, holding a fat lamb. He looked surprised to see me. I tossed the pliers to Mom, grabbed a knife from the table, and charged at him. I didn't hold back. He didn't dodge fast enough. My blade tore open his belly. He punched me hard. Years of butchering made him strong. One blow bloodied my nose. I collapsed in pain. Mom screamed, picked up the pliers I dropped, and started working the lock. She kept calling my name, saying I never listened. Dad kicked me across the floor, nearly out the door. I clawed my way back. Mom screamed, You still have one more chance. I swear, if time goes further back, I'll survive. The knife flew from my hand. Dad stared at us, eyes manic. You filthy bitches! You found out my secret. Neither of you is leaving. I'll turn you both into lamb stew. He stomped on my chest, grabbed the bowl of lamb tail soup, and tried to pour it into my mouth. But Mom leapt from the cage, snatched up the knife, and slashed his throat. She'd helped him butcher before. The bowl dropped from his hands. He stared up in disbelief, clutching his neck. Mom sobbed, shoving me toward the door. I grabbed her hand and, through the pain, pulled her out. My arm was torn open. The key vanished from my hand. But I laughed. I'd won. Mom, before you drank the soup, Dad never locked you in here. Today was the first time. Once I walk through this door, I can't come back. Even if you live in the past, I'll never reach you again. This was my one and only chance to save you. Mom sobbed uncontrollably. A sheep burst out of the yard, charging at us in rage. Mom blocked it, then turned to me, searching my face for confirmation.
It's Dad. I did it.